Well, Paul, we've just watched Return to Zero on Lifetime a couple of weeks ago, and you and Minnie Driver play a married couple who've been trying to have a child. At the very beginning of the movie, this is a big spoiler alert. In fact, we're going to talk about lots of spoilers if anybody's watching that needs to tune away. But you lose the baby right at the beginning of the movie, and it's just so emotionally crippling for this couple.
Mhm.
Is when you play something like that, how hard is it to get rid of that at the end of the day when you go home?
Um, it's a good question. You know, sometimes you think the super emotional stuff or the brutal days are the ones that stay with you, and surprisingly, sometimes it's these strange moments or smaller moments that are the ones that are actually harder to get off your back. For instance, in the movie, the day we shot the actual stillbirthing scene, which is pretty harrowing stuff. Um, it felt as hard as it was and as exhausted as we were at the end of the day. There was something about it. I think getting it done, and it was a big obstacle we all knew was coming. I think there was something about that that had a certain amount of catharsis to it, as we ramped up to it. But then there were scenes that me and I shot where um, the couple kind of being nasty to one another at the dinner table and stuff like that. And for some reason, that bothered me even more. Maybe because it felt, I don't know, it felt kind of unresolved in a way.
When you have a conversation like that dinner table scene,
Mhm.
even though you're all actors and you're reading, you're using lines that were written, that can kind of feel personal. I mean, it's like my people are personally attacking you.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And luckily, Minnie and I struck a pretty quick and easy friendship, so I didn't take it personally. But it's good when you take it personally because it makes your job as the other side of the tennis match a little easier. It makes you kind of get defensive and angry, and that some of the work is done for you.
Minnie told us this, and I've had other people in dramatic projects tell me this over the years, and that is on these kinds of movies, it's almost essential that you have lightheartedness and fun behind the scenes, in between takes, even more so than they say than a comedy, because you've got to lighten the mood a little bit.
I think that's true. I mean, I think different actors, directors, crew members have different attitudes, but Minnie and I were certainly on the same page, luckily, in this film, in that regard. We laughed quite a bit, and that certainly, it made our jobs easier. I think staying in that at all the time would have worn us down in a way that would have taken away from the performances, so that's exactly right, that we had to bring some levity to it.
In the middle of the movie, you can tell that the couple, I mean, everything's going sideways. It's not going to be a happy ending for this couple necessarily, although it turns out that way. But they could have made your character, especially on Lifetime, which is the women's network, they could have made your husband character the evil guy, the bad guy, but they didn't. They really showed both sides of everything, don't you think?
I do. It was one of the things that appealed to me about the script. I think what Sean renders so well and so smartly is the toll that this takes on both sides of a marriage. Obviously, for Minnie's character, for Maggie, she suffers not only an emotional but a physical trauma that she has to recover from. But Aaron, which is my character, he obviously suffers the emotional trauma as well. And they both act poorly and badly towards one another in the aftermath of that. And I think that it's really smart how Sean wrote those scenes in the aftermath of that.
And we've spoken to Sean too. Rob LaCuria interviewed him, and this is a very personal project to him. This happened to him in his life. So while you're not playing him, you're certainly playing someone like him, and he's right there on set. What kind of advice, what kind of tips did he give you to work through, say, the emotional stuff?
He was obviously an invaluable resource because although Aaron is certainly not Sean. I mean, it's in terms of the psychological, emotional process that happens or that happened to him. The script very much follows that line, and so if anything needed to be elucidated, he was right there. But to his credit, he wasn't precious about it. He never said, well, that doesn't feel true because I did this, or I said this, or even I felt this. He really let it, in my mind, become its own thing, and really that's to his credit, and I think helps the film. I mean, it was certainly it's a concern when you're doing anything that's biographical, and when the person who is creating the piece, it's about them, for it to become, they're trying to make a documentary as opposed to make a piece of fiction. And Sean really never fell into that trap anywhere along the lines. It was one of the things that I was immediately struck by when I sat down with him. I read the script. I really responded to it. I knew that Minnie was doing it, who I, were just dying to work with. And from the very beginning, it was clear that Sean wanted to serve the script as opposed to serve his own personal story.
Now, he had to make that choice early on when he was writing it. Is this going to be autobiographical, or is it going to be related to the incidents that happened?
Yeah, and I think that what he did, he can obviously speak better to this, but I think what he did as a writer, which is so smart, is that he kind of felt that to tell he and his wife's story specifically to them wouldn't be as good drama as if he took some characters who maybe had some different characteristics. I mean, I think that Maggie and Aaron who are the characters in the movie, are a lot more tightly wound than Sean and his wife are, a lot more maybe controlling or used to getting their way, maybe even children of privilege in a way, which I think accentuates their loss because they're people that are used to things kind of falling their way all the time, and so they have a longer way to go to reconcile that. And so I think that was a really smart piece of writing on Sean's part.
Well, you have a lot of scenes with Minnie, obviously, but you also have a lot of scenes with one of the guys I think is one of the best actors in the world, and that's Alfred Molina. What was it like working with him?
I mean, it was absolutely a dream for me. I think he's one of the best actors in the world too, and to the point that we were talking about earlier about levity, I mean, he is a guy, he's just having a ball acting, no matter what kind of scene it is. I learned so much from working with him, and he's both a generous man and a generous actor, and I mean, I couldn't have asked. It really was a dream come true to work with him. I mean, I've wanted to work with him since I saw Prick Up Your Ears in 1986. So when I was a kid, so it was great, and we had some really fun scenes together.
Yeah, he has some fun scenes toward the beginning, but at the very end, I mean, you feel for him, but he kind of turns out to be the one of the bad guys.
I mean, I think that what's really smart is that the more you learn about his character, the more you start to understand Aaron, my character, where he's coming from, maybe why he is the way he is a little bit, some of his crassness, or even some of his ambition, where that comes from, how Alfred's character treated the mother, and what that divorce was like. I think there's some really good backstory there, and I think it's great how it gets meted out over the course of the film. So when they have that final confrontation, it really is a crucible moment for Aaron, because he's confronting this huge presence in his life. And it was again kind of like playing with Minnie, playing with Alfred. He is a guy that I've revered, so it was easy to get into that space with him.
And one of the best scenes I've seen on any program or TV movie this past year was the funeral scene out on the water. Tell us about shooting that one, and when you watched the actual final product, what that meant to you.
That, from Sean's telling, was very similar to the ceremony that they had when they lost their son in stillbirth. And we knew that, and some of the people were present. And that was, again, one of those, it was really a hard scene. It's such a beautiful concept. They tie these balloons up, and then they say some prayers, and everybody says something personal, and they let the balloons go, and there's one balloon that represents the lost child. And we were out in this beautiful expanse of land in Palos Verdes over the ocean, and it just played great. And again, another really good piece of writing, I think, on Sean's part is that Aaron has this whole speech that he's prepared that he realizes is, irrelevant, and he decides not to say it because there are no words for this thing that's happened, and I think that's really sets the story in motion in terms of there is no roadmap as to how to deal with what's coming, and I think that seems really important for that too.
You've been doing this a while, and I've been watching, we've both been watching films and TV for our whole lives, and I think the films and movies and TV shows that incorporate silence as well are so good. And I recall Clint Eastwood talking years ago about how, or maybe it was somebody talking about him, saying when he was an actor more, how he would go up and just cut lines, because he liked the silences between the characters.
Yeah, I think that's it's a visual medium. It's not a linguistic medium ultimately, and so it is telling stories in pictures. I have a theater background, and I'm used to the words being the complete Bible of something. But in filmmaking, I think that there's a visual language at work too, and the more the story is told with pictures, the more emotional it can be. And I think Sean did a really good job with that. There's actually less words in the final Return to Zero than there were in the script. He did a lot of cutting even in the editing room, and I think it serves the story. What happens between them is so incredibly potent. There's not a lot to be said about it, and when you see a couple that has the history that Aaron and Maggie have, they've been together probably 20-some years at this point in their lives. They can sit at a dinner table in their pain, and the silence is more powerful than anything that they could say to one another.
They often know what each other are thinking anyway.
That's probably right. Yeah.
And now that it's aired, it's been out there a little while. What has been the reaction to you as you've met people or family or friends have seen it?
There was this, I had the most incredible experience at the premiere because, when Sean started talking about this movie on Facebook and other social media, there's this whole community out there that has experienced this. The statistics are pretty alarming. One in 160, I think, there's stillbirths in the United States, and so there were a lot of people at the premiere who had experienced this, and so it was just couple after couple after couple coming up to us and saying, I've never seen this represented before on film. I've never seen my story told in any form, and I can show this to my family and they'll understand more. I can show this to my friends and they'll understand more what we went through. And that was incredibly gratifying. It's not, I didn't expect that experience, and I want the film to stand on its own as a piece of narrative, as a piece of fiction, but the fact that it can also, from these people's telling, help explain to others, the devastation of this event, that was really special.
Well, we all feel like it's got several good shots at Emmy nominations here in a few weeks, and we'll see how that turns out when those voters make I think ballots are due back just in a couple of days. So let's talk about a moment about a couple of things in your career. I would imagine of all the things you've done, the one that still gains the most comments from people as you see different fans and so forth is probably Private Practice. Is that right?
Yeah, it had a huge following, and it was a long run. We did 6 years, and the Shonda Rhimes fans, the fans of Shonda's shows are very, very passionate fans, and so yeah, I get to meet a lot of those folks.
I talked to Kate Walsh about Fargo a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you've seen her in that, but just totally different than Private Practice.
Yeah, she's so great in it. Yeah.
She finally got to show off a different side. And I guess her next show is going to kind of be bawdy and along those same lines
Yeah,
for NBC.
I saw the trailer for it. It looks hilarious.
What is it? You've also been on Scandal lately too. What is it about Shonda? Why is she so good?
You know, it's that's a billion-dollar question at this point. I think that she's a great storyteller and a great writer, but I also think she does this remarkable thing where she is able to see what she has and adjust. I mean, I think that both on Private Practice and on Grey's and on Scandal, she is able to say, put a couple together, for instance, and say, oh yeah, I don't like them together. I'm going to write the characters in a different way. But this couple, this really works, so I'm going to write into that. And I think that she goes with her gut, and I think she responds to how she feels the audience is responding. And so I think that's part of her magic, too, is that she has this kind of fluid attitude towards the journey that the characters go on.
Well, and I get the sense, I've never met her or anything, but maybe you could confirm this, but I get the sense that she feels like the kind of writer, and there's been very few of them, I think, in TV history, especially that have had a quantity of shows, multiple shows. It seems like she's kind of like a chess player. Like she has already plotted moves in her mind. If we go this route, A route, it's going to lead to B, C, D, E, and F by the end of the year, or maybe even for the next season or the next season or the next season.
I think that's true, but I in some things, and then I think she has. I think some writers, for good or bad, have an idea and they stick to that idea. But I think that Shonda might know how something's going to be end, but she doesn't necessarily know how she's going to get there, and that's why she keeps it very close to. She plays it very close to the vest. I mean, I think even some of the writers don't know the direction it's going in any given season because she doesn't. She hasn't really made up her mind until she sees what has come before. And so I think that really keeps whatever she's doing fresh and potent for her audiences.
Well, that's a fine line to walk, and I think that's why that makes her also smart, is that she may have some end games in mind for certain people or certain storylines, but she also is listening to the public, listening to response, social media these days, and adjusting along the way, like you say. It may not affect the end game, but it certainly affects maybe some of the moves along the way.
I think that's true. I mean, but I really think that with Shonda, who, first and foremost, and you talk to her for 30 seconds and you realize that she is kind of an encyclopedia of television and film. She's just a fan first and foremost, is that she really trusts her gut as to what's right. I mean, she has taken a lot of flack. Started with Grey's, but she's taken it on all her shows for doing this or that with a character, and with the advent of social media, there is more there's more of a conversation. But she's really tough about sticking to her guns and saying, these are my characters, and this is what I felt was right for them, and I'm sorry that it disappoints people, but that's why we watch these shows too, is because we want someone to be taking us through it, and yeah, she's a master. There's no question.
Oh yeah, you can't totally rely. You can't even rely on your friends and family for these kind of things because you've ultimately got to trust your own gut. But I do think it helps if there are elements, especially with social media, that you go, oh wow, I didn't know there'd be such a negative reaction to that. Maybe I ought to fine tune it or go a different direction, as long as it doesn't interfere with your plan.
I think that's exactly right, and I think that's what she does so well.
Right. No, you can't. If we've seen many a show, especially TV shows, fail because the creators were way too reliant on instant reactions.
Yes, and are trying to please everybody.
That's right. That's right. If you don't ultimately on anything, I don't care if you're writing a book or a TV show or going to work every day as an insurance agent. If you're not ultimately pleasing yourself, then I don't think you're pleasing anybody.
I think that's just right, and she is the first fan of her shows, and she loves those characters and she loves those stories, and I think that really comes through.
Now you said during Canada today. What are you up there shooting?
I'm shooting a show called The Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, which is Bravo's first scripted series that Marty Noxon created, and Lisa Edelstein is starring in. And we're in the middle of our second episode, and I think it's going to be a really great show.
What's the timeline like? When will we see that?
It should be. I think Bravo was talking about putting it on in early December, so coming up, which is really exciting.
Now, are you a regular on there or a guest star?
I'm doing a bunch of them. I'm doing, I think, 10 episodes out of the first season, which is 12, somewhere in there. It's been really good. We're having a lot of fun. Janine Garofalo's on the show, and Lisa Edelstein, as I said. I've gotten to write an episode, which has been really a learning experience and really fun. So everyone's excited about it.
Is that the direction you want to go? So many people now are acting, writing, directing, producing, anything. They like to have their fingers in all the different areas.
I've always kind of been interested in all of that. I certainly don't want to stop acting. I think I really, really love it. But I've always really been interested in filmmaking. I had the good fortune. I got to direct a couple of episodes of Private Practice, and I found that really, really interesting. And challenging, but fun. And then I wrote a pilot with a friend last year, and as I was talking to Marty Noxon, the creator of this show, about that, she thought I would be a good fit for this show. So it's just something that kind of organically happened, and we'll see. But I do not want to turn in my SAG card anytime soon. I want to go get to play dress up.
You don't have to just totally pick one. I mean, you can do all of them.
Good. I hope so.
Rob interviewed Tony Goldwyn a couple of weeks ago, and he directs several Scandals, and he was talking about the difficulty of, especially an episode maybe where he's heavy in and he's also directing.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a challenge. One of the Private Practice ones I did, it was a pretty heavy storyline, and it was a pretty emotional storyline, and I was really nervous about that aspect of it. But I think if you have a good support network around you and you trust the people you're working with, and you can kind of step between those two worlds pretty seamlessly. Tony's a master at it. I'm surprised to hear that he has any anxiety about it whatsoever, because his episodes.
Well, I think in his case, he's done several, but I think this season there was one in particular that he'd already read that was very heavy on him and very emotional. He wasn't directing that one, and they swapped it on him, and he suddenly was directing that one. He said he didn't mind, but boy, it was like a total switch over in his mind as to what his week was going to be like.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I've heard, we've never interviewed him, but I've heard John Hamm say, I think this is more the case for a lead than maybe a supporting player. But he usually directs an episode each year of Mad Men. But he said he would only direct like either the first one or the second one because of the prep time. He wanted to be able to do that, in the weeks leading up and not have to worry about it, say, during the middle of the season.
That's right. They did a really nice thing for me on Private Practice where they would write me lighter in the previous episode than the one I was directing, so that I actually had the time to prep. Because that really makes all the difference once you're there on the day, is that you've had your prep time.
Is that the single hardest part about directing a TV episode, is the prep time?
I think so, because especially, I've never directed a show I wasn't on, obviously. So I think that for prepping directors, they're coming in. Oftentimes the scripts are not completed, so they don't have that much prep where it's a last-minute thing. They're also trying to understand the culture of the place, understand how each actor works, understand the crew and the DP. So it's a huge machine, and they're kind of coming in to take it over. They have to get caught up. They got to get up to speed very, very quickly. So yeah, I think that's a big challenge. And the really great TV directors are the ones who can kind of hit the ground running, and like we were talking before, make the tough decisions with their gut.
Well, listen, I've really enjoyed this today. Good luck with the new show you're shooting, and good luck with the Emmys this summer.
Thank you very much. Thanks for talking to me. It's been great.
Absolutely. We've been big admirers of yours for a while, so it's good to finally have you on with us.
Well, thank you very much.